I never thought my biggest enemy would be a woman named Patricia who wore pastel cardigans and owned 17 garden gnomes. But here we are. It started on a Tuesday morning in November when I was loading split oak into my outdoor wood boiler behind my house in Pineville, North Carolina. The air was crisp, and I was thinking about how much money I'd saved on heating bills since installing the unit last spring. My name is Connor Kellerman, and I'd spent the better part of 3 months researching and saving for this boiler setup. The thing was a beauty, a central boiler classic edge model that heated my entire 2,200 square foot house, plus my workshop, without costing me an arm and a leg each month. I was stacking another arm load when I heard the distinctive click of heels on pavement. Patricia Morrison, president of the Willow Creek Estates HOA, was making her way down my driveway with a clipboard clutched to her chest like a shield. Her blonde bob didn't move in the wind, cemented in place by what I assumed was industrial-strength hairspray. "Connor," she called out, her voice pitched high and tight. "We need to talk about that thing." I set down my wood and wiped my hands on my jeans. "Morning, Patricia. What thing would that be?" She gestured dramatically at my boiler, which sat on a concrete pad about 40 feet from my house. "That eyesore. That smoke-belching monstrosity. I've received complaints." "Complaints from who?" I asked, keeping my voice level. My neighbor to the left was Frank, a retired firefighter who actually helped me install the thing. My neighbor to the right was an empty lot that had been for sale for 2 years. Mrs. Henderson, 3 houses down, saw smoke yesterday and was convinced the neighborhood was burning down. The Patels behind you say their laundry smells like a campfire. And frankly, Connor, it's just not aesthetically pleasing. I took a deep breath. "Patricia, this is a certified outdoor wood furnace. It's legal, it's safe, and it's on my property. I checked the HOA covenants before I installed it. There's nothing in there about outdoor heating systems." Her eyes narrowed. "The covenant clearly states that no structure can be erected without Architectural Review Board approval. Did you submit plans for this structure? It's not a structure, it's a heating appliance. It has walls and a roof, Connor. That makes it a structure." She clicked her pen and made a note on her clipboard. "I'm issuing you a violation notice. You have 30 days to remove it or face fines of $100 per day." My jaw clenched. "You can't be serious." "Deadly serious. The HOA board voted this morning, 6-1. Have a nice day, Connor." She turned on her heel and marched back up my driveway, leaving me standing there with a piece of paper fluttering in my hand that she'd somehow produced from her clipboard without me noticing. I called my buddy Marcus that evening. He dealt with HOA issues in his neighborhood over in Charlotte when they tried to fine him for parking his work van in his own driveway. "Man, they are ruthless," Marcus said through the phone. "You got a copy of the covenants?" "Yeah, I read through the whole thing before I bought the house." "That was 3 years ago. There's nothing about heating systems. What about amendments? They can add stuff if they vote on it." That hit me. I haven't been to an HOA meeting in over a year. "There's your problem, brother. These people operate in the shadows. You need to show up to the next meeting and fight this." The next HOA meeting was 2 weeks away, which meant 2 weeks of Patricia driving by my house at least once a day. I saw her white Lexus SUV cruise past my property like a shark circling wounded prey. Twice, she stopped and took pictures of my boiler from the street. I spent those 2 weeks doing research. I printed out manufacturer specs, emissions reports, and legal precedents from similar cases in North Carolina. I even contacted a lawyer friend, Derek, who specialized in property law. "The thing is," Derek explained over coffee at a local diner, "HOAs have a lot of power if their covenants are written broadly enough, but they also have to follow their own rules. Did they give you proper notice before voting on this? I don't think they voted on a new rule. Patricia said they voted on my specific violation. Derek raised an eyebrow. That's different. They're interpreting an existing rule. You might have a case for arguing that your boiler doesn't meet the definition of a structure requiring approval. But honestly, Connor, fighting an HOA is expensive and exhausting. You might win, but you'll spend thousands on legal fees. So I just let them bully me. I didn't say that. I'm saying pick your battles. What's your end game here? I stirred my coffee, watching the cream swirl. I just want to heat my house without paying $200 a month to the power company. Is that too much to ask? The HOA meeting was held in the community center, a bland beige building near the neighborhood entrance. I arrived 15 minutes early and found about 20 other residents already seated in folding chairs. Patricia stood at the front with her board members, arranging papers on a table like she was preparing for a corporate presentation. I took a seat in the third row. A woman I recognized from the neighborhood pool sat next to me. "You're the wood burner guy," she whispered. "That's me. My husband thinks Patricia is being ridiculous. We wanted to tell you that, but we didn't want to get on her bad side." She glanced nervously toward the front. "I appreciate that," I said, though I was thinking about how everyone was too scared to stand up to a woman whose greatest authority was over garden gnome regulations. Patricia called the meeting to order at 7 p.m. sharp. She went through the standard agenda items: upcoming holiday decorations contest, reminders about trash can placement, discussion of repaving the walking trails. Then she got to new business. "Item 7, she announced. "Code violation at 447 Maple Ridge Drive. My address. Connor Kellerman has erected an unauthorized structure that violates our architectural standards. Connor, would you like to address the board?" I stood up, holding my folder of research. "Yes, I would. Thank you, Patricia. As I mentioned before, my outdoor wood furnace isn't a structure requiring approval. It's a heating appliance, no different than an air conditioning unit or a heat pump. I have documentation here showing that these units are classified as mechanical systems, not structures, under North Carolina Building Code." Patricia's smile didn't waver. "That may be true for state building codes, Connor, but our HOA covenant supersedes that. Section 4, paragraph 12 clearly states that any construction must be approved by the Architectural Review Board. Your device was constructed, therefore it requires approval. I didn't construct it. I had it installed by licensed contractors. Semantics." She waved her hand dismissively. "Did you or did you not obtain approval before installation?" "No, because I didn't believe it was necessary based on my reading of the covenants." One of the board members, a balding man named Roger, spoke up. "The issue isn't just the approval, Connor. Several residents have complained about smoke and odor. We have a responsibility to address quality of life concerns." I pulled out another paper. "This unit is EPA certified. It produces less particulate matter than a fireplace or fire pit, both of which are allowed under our covenants." I have the emissions data right here. Patricia's expression tightened. "Nevertheless, the board has voted. You have 30 days to remove the unit or apply for retroactive approval, which will require a 2/3 vote from the Architectural Review Board. That's our decision." "When was this vote?" I asked, because I wasn't notified of any special meeting. "It was during our executive session last week. Don't homeowners have a right to be present when issues affecting their property are discussed?" Patricia's face flushed slightly. "Executive sessions are for board members only." "It's in our bylaws, Connor. If you attended meetings regularly, you'd know that." I wanted to argue more, but I could see the other board members nodding in agreement with Patricia. This was a losing battle, at least for tonight. I sat down, my jaw tight with frustration. After the meeting, 3 different people came up to me in the parking lot. Frank, my neighbor, was the first. "That was a load of garbage," he said, shaking his head. "Your boiler doesn't bother me at all. I don't even notice the smoke." An older couple I'd seen around the neighborhood introduced themselves as Bill and Helen. "We've been fighting Patricia for 2 years over our fence height," Bill said. "She's on a power trip. Document everything, and I mean everything." I drove home feeling defeated but also angry. The more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't really about my boiler. This was about control. Patricia had found something to target, and she wasn't going to let it go. The next morning, I found another notice taped to my front door. This one informed me that I was being fined $50 for failure to comply with initial violation notice. Apparently, the 30-day countdown had started from the day she first approached me, not from the HOA meeting. I called Derek again. "That doesn't sound right," he said. "The violation period should start from official written notice, which would be the meeting minutes or a certified letter. Did you get anything certified?" "No, just papers she handed me or taped to my door." "Save everything. Take photos with timestamps. If this goes legal, you'll want documentation that they didn't follow proper procedure." But legal action meant money I didn't have to spare. I worked as a systems analyst for a mid-sized tech company, and my wife Jessica had passed away 2 years ago from cancer. The medical bills had drained most of our savings. This house, this neighborhood, it was supposed to be my fresh start. The wood boiler was supposed to help me save money and feel self-sufficient again. Now it was turning into another expensive nightmare. I decided to try the architectural review board application that Patricia had mentioned. Maybe if I played their game, submitted official paperwork, and showed up with all my documentation, they'd have to approve it. The application required a detailed site plan, photographs from multiple angles, a description of materials and dimensions, and a $150 processing fee. I spent a weekend preparing everything. I measured my boiler to the inch, took professional quality photos, and wrote a 3-page explanation of how the system worked and why it was beneficial. I even got signed letters from Frank and 2 other neighbors saying they had no objection to the unit. I submitted the application on a Monday morning, dropping it off at Patricia's house since she was listed as the review board chair. She answered the door in workout clothes, her hair still shellacked into place. "I'm submitting my architectural review application," I said, handing her the envelope. She took it without looking inside. "The board meets once a month. You'll have an answer in 4 to 6 weeks. 4 to 6 weeks. My 30-day violation period ends in 2 weeks." "That's not my problem, Connor. Perhaps you should have thought of this before installing an unauthorized structure." She started to close the door. "Wait," I said. "If I'm in the process of applying for approval, shouldn't that pause the violation period?" "No. The violation stands until the application is approved. If it's approved." She closed the door. I stood on her welcome mat, staring at the wreath on her door, wondering how someone could be so deliberately obstructive. This wasn't about rules. This was about her enjoying the power to make my life difficult. The next 2 weeks were tense. I continued using my boiler because I wasn't about to freeze or pay enormous electric bills while Patricia played her games. Every few days, a new notice appeared on my door. $50. $100. The fines were adding up in writing, though I hadn't received an actual bill yet. Then I got a certified letter. Finally, something official. I signed for it and opened it in my kitchen. It was from a law firm in Charlotte that specialized in HOA enforcement. They were representing Willow Creek Estates, HOA, in the matter of my violation. I owed $850 in fines. I had 10 days to pay or they would place a lien on my property. A lien. They could actually take my house over a wood boiler. I called Derek immediately. They're escalating, I told him. $850 in fines and threatening a lien. Okay, now we're in my territory, Derek said. They can't just place a lien without following specific legal procedures. North Carolina law requires them to provide proper notice, an opportunity for a hearing, and the liens have to be for valid charges. Have you had any kind of hearing? Just the HOA meeting where they wouldn't listen to me. That's not a proper hearing for this purpose. Don't pay the fines yet. Let me draft a response. This is going to cost you some money for my services, but probably less than paying their fines and definitely less than fighting a lien. Derek charged me $500 to draft a letter challenging the fines and the procedures the HOA had followed. His letter was beautiful, citing specific North Carolina statutes and case law about HOA enforcement and homeowner rights. He sent it certified to both Patricia and the law firm. 3 days later, I got a response. Not from the lawyers, but from Patricia herself in a handwritten note taped to my door. Your legal intimidation tactics won't work. The board is standing firm. You have 7 days until we proceed with the lien. I photographed the note and sent it to Derek. Is she serious? I texted. She's bluffing, he replied, or she's getting bad legal advice. Keep documenting. On day 5, I got my architectural review application back in the mail. Denied. The stated reason: proposed structure does not meet aesthetic standards of the community. Smoke and odor concerns from residents. Board vote: 3-0 against approval. 3 votes. There were supposed to be 5 people on the Architectural Review Board according to the HOA bylaws. I looked up who was on the board. Patricia Morrison, chair. Roger Hendricks, the balding guy from the meeting. And Denise Patterson, another woman I'd seen at Patricia's side at neighborhood events. 2 other positions were listed as vacant. I called Derek again. They're making decisions with an incomplete board. That might be your angle, he said. If the bylaws require 5 members and they're voting with 3, those decisions might not be valid. Let me look into it. While Derek researched, I started thinking practically. Even if I won this legal battle, did I really want to stay in a neighborhood where the HOA president was out to get me? Where I'd have to fight for every little thing? Where my neighbors were too scared to publicly support me, but I also couldn't just let Patricia win. And I still needed to heat my house affordably. That's when I stumbled onto pellet boilers while doing late-night research. These systems burned compressed wood pellets instead of logs, and they were incredibly efficient. More importantly, they produced almost no visible smoke because of how completely they combusted the fuel. And the really interesting part was that in most jurisdictions, including North Carolina, they were classified as biomass heating systems and had different regulations than wood boilers. I found a company out of Asheville that specialized in residential pellet boiler systems. I called them the next morning and explained my situation to a guy named Tom. Yeah, we've dealt with HOA issues before, Tom said. The thing about pellet systems is they're much more acceptable to neighbors because you don't have the smoke or the need to store logs. We've got a model that's probably twice the BTU output of your current wood boiler, fully automated, and it looks like a big water heater. People put them in garages or sheds all the time. How much are we talking? Full system with installation, you're looking at around $12,000. But the efficiency is incredible. You'll save probably 40% more on heating costs than your wood boiler, and the pellets are delivered in bulk, so you don't have to process firewood. $12,000. I didn't have $12,000 sitting around. but I did have a home equity line of credit that I'd opened but never used. An idea started forming. What if I went bigger? What if I installed a system so efficient and clean that the HOA couldn't possibly have grounds to object? And what if I documented the whole thing and followed every single one of their ridiculous procedures to the letter? I talked to Tom for another hour about the technical specs. The system he was describing was a Froling P4 pellet boiler, Austrian-made, with automated ash removal and incredibly low emissions. It could heat my house and provide all my hot water, plus I could add radiant floor heating to my garage and workshop if I wanted. The unit itself was about the size of a refrigerator and could be installed inside a building. What if I built a small equipment shed for it? I asked Tom. Something that looks nice, matches my house with proper ventilation. That's what most people do. Make it look like a regular shed or outbuilding. Then the boiler is completely hidden inside. I spent the next week working on a plan. I designed an 8 by 10-foot shed that would match my house's siding and roof shingles. It would look like a normal storage shed from the outside, but inside would be the pellet boiler, a bulk pellet storage hopper, and all the piping connections. I'd have it professionally landscaped around it, maybe some nice shrubs and a small tree. The total cost, including the shed, boiler, installation, and landscaping, came to about $18,000. It was a lot of money, but I was tired of Patricia's harassment and I wanted to prove a point. I also knew that this system would pay for itself in energy savings over the next 10 years. I prepared the most detailed architectural review application you've ever seen. 40 pages of plans, specifications, photos of similar installations, landscaping designs, and emission certifications. I included letters from Tom's company, testimonials from other customers in HOA communities, and even a letter from an environmental engineer explaining how clean burning pellet boilers were. The application fee was still $150. I hand-delivered it to Patricia's house on a Saturday morning. This time I brought a witness, Frank from next door. Patricia opened the door and looked at the thick envelope I was holding. "What's this?" "Architectural review application for a new heating system installation," I said. "Frank here is witnessing that I'm delivering it to you as the review board chair on November 23rd at 9:47 a.m. Frank held up his phone, showing that he was recording. "Just for the record," he said cheerfully. Patricia's face went through several shades of red. "You can't record me. We're on your front porch, which is visible from the public street. Pretty sure we can," Frank said. She snatched the envelope from my hand. "The board will review it in due course." "Great. And just to confirm, my understanding is that once an application is submitted, no further fines can be accrued until the board makes a decision. Is that correct?" "I'll have to check the bylaws," Patricia said. "I already did. Section 8, Paragraph 3. No penalties shall be assessed while an application for approval is under active review, so I expect those daily fines to stop as of today." Patricia slammed the door without another word. Frank and I walked back to my house, and he was grinning. Man, that felt good. I've wanted to stand up to her for years. "Thanks for having my back," I said. "I'm probably going to need more witnesses before this is over." The Architectural Review Board meeting was scheduled for 3 weeks later. In the meantime, I got another letter from the HOA's lawyers. This one was more carefully worded, acknowledging that my application was under review, but stating that the previous fine still stood and must be paid. They also claimed that my current wood boiler was still in violation and must be removed regardless of the new application. Derek drafted another response explaining that penalizing me while my application was pending was retaliatory and violated both the HOA's bylaws and North Carolina homeowner protection statutes. He also pointed out that they'd failed to provide a proper hearing before assessing fines, which was required by law. The back and forth continued for weeks. Letters, counter-letters, threats, and legal citations. My mailbox became a battleground. But I kept using my wood boiler, and I started preparing for the pellet system installation. I hired a contractor who came highly recommended, a guy named Steve who'd done HOA-compliant work all over the Charlotte area. He looked at my plans and nodded approvingly. "This is good work," he said. "If they reject this application, they're just being vindictive. Everything here exceeds code requirements." "Oh, they're definitely being vindictive," I said, "but I want to make sure they don't have any legitimate grounds to reject it." The review board meeting finally arrived. It was held at Patricia's house, which seemed inappropriate, but apparently that's how they'd always done it. I showed up with Derek, Frank, and my contractor, Steve. Patricia looked distinctly unhappy to see my entourage. "The applicant is allowed to attend," she said. "I'm not sure about all these other people. This is my legal counsel and my expert witnesses," I said. "The bylaws don't prohibit them from attending." Patricia pursed her lips but didn't argue. The other two board members, Roger and Denise, sat at Patricia's dining room table with my application spread out in front of them. They'd clearly already reviewed it. Roger spoke first. "This is certainly thorough. I'll give you that, Connor. But we have some concerns about adding another heating structure to your property." "It's not another structure," I said. "The application clearly states that I'll be removing the existing wood boiler before installing the new system. The shed is just housing for the equipment." Denise chimed in. "But why do you need such a large system? This seems excessive for a single-family home." Steve, my contractor, spoke up. "Actually, it's appropriately sized for a home of this square footage with domestic hot water and supplemental workshop heating. The specs are all in the application." Patricia flipped through pages without really looking at them. "My concern is precedent. If we approve this, what's to stop every homeowner from installing industrial heating systems?" Derek cleared his throat. "With respect, this isn't an industrial system. It's a residential biomass heating system that meets all EPA and North Carolina environmental standards. It's actually cleaner than most traditional heating systems." "It still burns wood," Patricia said, "which was the original problem." "It burns wood pellets," I corrected, "which produce about 5% of the emissions of a wood-burning stove and virtually no visible smoke. There's a huge difference." The review board members exchanged glances. I could tell they were looking for any reason to reject my application, but I'd been so thorough that they were struggling to find legitimate grounds. Finally, Roger said, "We need to take this to a vote among the full HOA membership. A decision this significant should involve the community." Derek immediately objected. "The bylaws don't require a community vote for architectural applications. The review board has full authority to approve or deny. You're inventing new procedures. We have the right to escalate significant decisions," Patricia insisted. "Show me where in the bylaws," Derek challenged. The room went silent for a moment. Patricia couldn't show him because that provision didn't exist. She just made it up. "Fine," she finally said. "We'll vote now. All in favor of denying this application." Patricia and Denise raised their hands. Roger hesitated, then slowly lowered his hand without voting. "Roger," Patricia prompted. "I can't in good conscience vote to deny this," he said. "Everything in the application meets our standards. If we deny it, we're opening ourselves up to a lawsuit, and frankly, we'd lose." Patricia's face went white with anger. You're supposed to support the board's decisions. I'm supposed to make fair decisions based on our actual rules, Roger said. This personal vendetta against Connor needs to stop. Denise looked uncomfortable. Maybe Roger has a point, Patricia. This application is really well done. Are you both turning on me? Patricia's voice rose. After everything I've done for this community. Nobody's turning on you, Roger said calmly. We're just trying to be fair. The meeting devolved into arguing between the board members. Eventually, they agreed to table the decision for 2 weeks and consult with their lawyer. I left feeling cautiously optimistic. If Roger was breaking ranks with Patricia, maybe I had a chance. 2 weeks later, I got a certified letter with the board's decision, approved with conditions. The conditions were reasonable. The shed had to match my house's aesthetics, which was already in my plan. The installation had to be inspected by the county, and I had to provide before and after photos for the HOA records. I was stunned. I'd actually won. But there was a catch at the bottom of the letter. Approval of new system does not retroactively validate previous violations. Outstanding fines of $850 remain due and payable within 30 days. Derek laughed when I showed him. Of course, she couldn't let it go completely. All right, here's what we do. We'll offer to settle for removal of all fines in exchange for you voluntarily removing the wood boiler within 7 days of the new system being operational. They get what they wanted originally. You get to move forward without paying bogus fines. We drafted the settlement offer and sent it. 3 days later, I got a response from the HOA's lawyer accepting the terms. Patricia had been overruled by her own legal counsel, who apparently saw the writing on the wall that their position on the fines was legally weak. I scheduled the installation for early January. Tom's crew arrived on a Monday morning with the pellet boiler, a massive pile of materials for the shed, and enough piping to plumb half the neighborhood. The installation took 3 days. The shed went up first, built to match my house perfectly. Then the boiler was installed inside, along with a 3-ton pellet hopper that would hold enough fuel for about 2 weeks. The system was connected to my existing hydronic heating lines, and Steve installed new radiant floor heating in my garage as a bonus since we had capacity to spare. When it was all done, you couldn't even tell there was a boiler inside. The shed looked like a miniature version of my house, and the only external signs of the system were 2 small exhaust vents that barely showed any output when the system was running. Tom fired it up for the first time, and we watched the control panel cycle through its startup sequence. The pellets fed automatically from the hopper, ignited with an electric starter, and burned so completely that the exhaust was almost invisible. "This is a beautiful installation," Tom said. "One of our best residential jobs." I had the county inspector out the next day. He spent an hour examining everything and signed off with 0 issues. "Cleanest installation I've seen," he told me. "Wish more people would use systems like this." I took detailed photos of everything and submitted my completion report to the HOA. Then I called a friend who had a trailer, and we loaded up my old wood boiler. I sold it to a guy who lived out in the country where there were no HOA restrictions. He was thrilled to get it for half price. 2 days after I submitted my completion report, Patricia showed up at my door. I almost didn't recognize her without her clipboard. "I wanted to see this system everyone's talking about," she said, her voice lacking its usual sharp edge. I was tempted to tell her to get lost, but I decided to take the high road. "Sure, come around back." I showed her the shed. She walked around it, examining the construction, the landscaping, even peeking through the small window I'd installed. "It's very nice," she admitted. "You can't even hear it running." "That was the point," I said. Modern pellet systems are incredibly quiet and efficient. She turned to face me. You know, Connor, you could have just removed the wood boiler when I first asked. This whole situation could have been avoided. I felt my temper rise but kept my voice even. Patricia, I tried to work with you from the beginning. I showed you documentation, offered to address concerns, and followed every rule. You were the one who made this a battle. I was protecting the community's interests. No, you were exercising power. There's a difference. I crossed my arms. Look, what's done is done. I'm in compliance now. Can we just move forward? She nodded slowly. I suppose. Though for the record, I still think your original wood boiler was inappropriate for a residential neighborhood. Noted, I said, resisting the urge to argue further. After she left, Frank came over. Did I just see Patricia Morrison being civil to you? Barely civil, but yes. Miracles do happen. He grinned. Hey, how's the new system working? Incredible. My house is warmer than it's ever been. The garage is actually comfortable to work in now, and my energy monitoring shows I'm using about 60% less power than this time last year. 60%? That's huge. And the pellets get delivered in bulk every month. No more splitting wood, no more hauling logs, no more smoke or ash. Honestly, Patricia did me a favor. This system is way better than the wood boiler. Word spread through the neighborhood about my setup. Over the next few weeks, I had at least a dozen neighbors stop by asking questions. Several of them were interested in installing similar systems. A couple even asked for Tom's contact information. This created a new problem for Patricia. If multiple homeowners started installing pellet systems, she couldn't very well deny their applications after approving mine. She'd set a precedent. At the January HOA meeting, Patricia announced that the Architectural Review Board would be developing new guidelines for alternative heating systems. She didn't sound happy about it. We need to establish clear standards so that these installations are done tastefully and don't negatively impact property values, she said from the front of the room. I raised my hand. I'd be happy to serve on a committee to help develop those guidelines. I've done extensive research on these systems. Patricia's expression was priceless. She clearly wanted to say no, but several other homeowners voiced their support for the idea. I think that's a great idea, Roger said. Connor's been through the process. He knows what works. Denise even nodded. It would be good to have someone with practical experience involved. Patricia had no choice but to agree. Fine. Connor, you can join the committee. First meeting will be next Tuesday. That Tuesday meeting was interesting. Besides me, the committee included Roger, Denise, and two other homeowners I didn't know well. Patricia was there but seemed to have decided to take a backseat role. We spent 2 hours hammering out reasonable guidelines. The key points were that alternative heating systems had to be properly housed in structures that matched neighborhood aesthetics. They had to meet all applicable codes and emissions standards, and installations required an inspection. Nothing in the guidelines was unreasonable. I even suggested adding a provision that the HOA could request an emissions test if neighbors complained, just to ensure accountability. Everyone agreed. The guidelines were presented at the February HOA meeting and passed with overwhelming support. 3 homeowners immediately submitted applications for pellet system installations. Life settled into a new normal. My heating bills stayed low throughout the rest of the winter. I got into a routine with the pellet delivery service, which dropped off 2 tons of pellets every 6 weeks. The system was so automated that I barely had to think about it, except to empty the small ash pan every couple weeks. Patricia and I maintained a polite but distant relationship. She'd nod if we passed each other at the mailbox. I'd wave. We both knew we'd never be friends, but at least the active hostility was over. In March, something interesting happened. I got a call from a guy named David who lived in a neighborhood across town. "I heard about your fight with your HOA," he said. "A friend of a friend told me the story. I'm dealing with something similar, and I was wondering if you could give me some advice." I spent an hour on the phone with him, sharing everything I'd learned. Derek's contact information, Tom's company name, the importance of documentation, and the specific North Carolina statutes that protected homeowner rights. David ended up hiring Derek and installing a system almost identical to mine. His HOA tried to fight it initially, but backed down when Derek sent them a letter outlining how my case had been resolved. After that, I got more calls. Word was spreading in the Charlotte area HOA community that there was a legal precedent for biomass heating systems. Derek even asked if he could refer people to me for technical consultation. By summer, I'd helped a dozen homeowners navigate their HOA battles over alternative heating systems. Some were pellet boilers like mine, others were ground source heat pumps or solar thermal systems. The common thread was HOAs initially rejecting them, and then backing down when presented with proper documentation and legal pressure. In July, I got a surprising call from Roger, the HOA board member who'd refused to vote against my application. "Hey Connor, I wanted to give you a heads up about something," he said. "Patricia is being removed as HOA president." "What? Why?" "Several board members, including me, have been documenting issues with how she's been running things. The vendetta against you was just the most visible problem. She's also been misusing HOA funds, making decisions without board votes and basically acting like she owns the neighborhood. We're calling for a vote of no confidence at the next meeting." Wow, I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. This has been building for a while. Your situation just brought everything to a head. A lot of people are tired of her bullying. The vote happened at the August HOA meeting, and I made sure to attend. Patricia tried to maintain control of the meeting, but Bill, the older guy who talked to me after my first disastrous meeting, made a formal motion for a vote of no confidence. "This board has operated under Patricia Morrison's leadership for 5 years, Bill said. "In that time, we've seen increasing complaints about arbitrary enforcement, personal vendettas, and a lack of transparency. I move that we hold a vote to remove her as president and elect new leadership." Patricia's face went bright red. "This is ridiculous. I've dedicated countless hours to this community." "Nobody's questioning your dedication," Roger said calmly. "We're questioning your judgment and your methods." The vote was done by secret ballot. Out of 47 homeowners present, 39 voted in favor of removing Patricia as president. It wasn't even close. Patricia gathered her things in silence and walked out of the community center. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. Then I remembered the months of stress, the legal bills, and the smug satisfaction she'd taken in trying to make my life miserable. Roger was elected as the new president. One of his first acts was to review all outstanding HOA violations and fines. He found dozens of questionable penalties, including mine from before the settlement. He proposed, and the board voted to approve, a clean slate policy that wiped out any disputed fines older than 6 months. The neighborhood felt different after that. People seemed more relaxed at HOA meetings. Decisions were made more collaboratively. The new board focused on actual community improvements rather than petty enforcement. My pellet heating system continued to work flawlessly. By October, as the weather started cooling down again, I calculated that I'd saved over $1,800 on energy costs in the first year compared to conventional heating. At that rate, The system would pay for itself in about 10 years, and then it would be pure savings after that. Better yet, 4 other homes in the neighborhood had installed similar systems, and 2 more had applications pending. The alternative heating guidelines that our committee had developed became a model that other HOAs in the area started adopting. Derek told me that he'd successfully used my case as precedent in at least 20 other HOA disputes. You basically established homeowner rights for renewable heating systems in North Carolina, he said. That's not nothing. In November, almost exactly a year after this whole mess started, I was out loading pellets into the hopper when I saw a white Lexus SUV drive slowly past my house. Patricia was at the wheel, staring at my property. For a moment, our eyes met. She looked away first and kept driving. I never saw her at another HOA meeting after that. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that she and her husband were thinking about moving, something about wanting a more traditional community. Frank and I had a good laugh about that over beers in my now heated garage. Traditional community, Frank repeated. That's code for somewhere I can boss people around without consequences. Let her go find that magical place, I said. I'm happy here now. The following spring, I decided to add solar panels to my roof. I learned my lesson from the pellet boiler experience and submitted a detailed architectural review application before ordering anything. The new board approved it in 2 weeks without any drama. The solar panels, combined with my efficient pellet heating system, cut my energy costs to almost nothing. My monthly electric bill averaged about $30. In the summer months, my solar production actually exceeded my usage, and I sold power back to the grid. I became something of a local expert on home energy systems. The local newspaper even did a story about me titled, "Homeowner Turns HOA Battle into Energy Independence." The article explained the whole saga with Patricia and the wood boiler, the switch to pellets, and then the addition of solar panels. After the article came out, I was invited to speak at a sustainable living conference in Raleigh. I give a presentation about navigating HOA restrictions while pursuing energy independence. The room was packed, mostly with homeowners who'd faced similar battles with their HOAs. During the Q&A session, someone asked me if I regretted buying in an HOA community. I thought about it carefully before answering. Honestly, no. I love my house, I love most of my neighbors, and the neighborhood is well maintained. HOAs aren't inherently bad. The problem is when you get people in leadership positions who care more about control than community. The key is staying engaged, knowing your rights, and not being afraid to stand up for yourself. Someone else asked what advice I'd give to homeowners facing HOA disputes. Document everything, I said. Take photos, save emails, record conversations where legal. Know your HOA covenants better than the board does. Hire a good lawyer if you need to, and find allies in your community. I never could have won my battle without neighbors like Frank who were willing to support me. After my presentation, at least 20 people came up to talk to me. They shared their own HOA horror stories and asked for specific advice. I exchanged contact information with several of them and promised to help however I could. One woman named Barbara was dealing with an HOA that was trying to fine her for installing a rainwater collection system. They say it's unappealing, she said, but it's just some barrels behind my house that you can't even see from the street. That's nonsense, I told her. Rainwater collection is actually encouraged by North Carolina environmental policy. Get documentation of that. Hire a lawyer to write a letter citing the relevant statutes, and make sure everything is documented. I'll send you Derek's contact info. Driving home from Raleigh that evening, I reflected on how much my life had changed in 18 months. What started as a simple desire to heat my house efficiently had turned into a crusade for homeowner rights, a crash course in HOA law, and an unexpected side career as a community advocate. More importantly, I'd learned that standing up to bullies was worth it. Patricia had counted on me being too intimidated or too tired to fight back. She'd used that strategy successfully with others before me, but I'd called her bluff, and it had made a difference not just for me but for my whole community. The pellet heating system that I'd installed as a middle finger to Patricia's overreach had proven to be one of the best investments I'd ever made. It was cleaner, more efficient, and more automated than the wood boiler. In a weird way, I should have thanked Patricia for forcing me to upgrade. By the second winter with the pellet system, I'd completely forgotten what it was like to worry about heating bills. The system just worked, quietly and efficiently, keeping my house at a comfortable 72 degrees while costing less than running a couple of space heaters would have. I did eventually cross paths with Patricia again at a local hardware store. It was early December and I was picking up some supplies. She was in the lighting aisle looking at Christmas decorations. "Hello, Patricia," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "Connor." She didn't quite meet my eyes. "I heard you're quite the local celebrity now. Energy expert, HOA reform advocate." "I never wanted to be. I just wanted to heat my house." She set down the strand of lights she'd been examining. "For what it's worth, I never meant for things to get so out of hand. I just thought your wood boiler was inappropriate for the neighborhood. You could have worked with me instead of against me," I said. "That's all I ever wanted. I know. I've been doing a lot of thinking since I stepped down from the board. I realize I got too caught up in the power of the position. I forgot that we're all just neighbors trying to make our community nice." It was probably the closest thing to an apology I was ever going to get from her. "I appreciate you saying that." She nodded and walked away down the aisle. I watched her go, feeling a strange sense of closure. The anger and frustration I'd carried for months had faded. She was just a person who'd made mistakes, not the villain I'd built her up to be in my head. That Christmas, the neighborhood held its annual holiday party at the community center. Under Roger's leadership, the event was more relaxed and fun than it had been in years. There was no competition for best decorated house, no judgments about who brought what food, just neighbors enjoying each other's company. Frank and I stood near the punch bowl, watching kids run around playing tag. "You know what's funny?" Frank said. "This whole mess with your boiler ended up being the best thing that could have happened to the neighborhood. It got rid of Patricia's toxic leadership and brought in reforms that made the whole HOA better." "I'm just glad it's over," I said. "Though I do get emails every week from people asking for advice on their HOA battles. You should write a book, How to Beat Your HOA and Upgrade Your Home." I laughed. Maybe I will someday. As the evening wound down and people started heading home, Roger pulled me aside. "Hey, I wanted to run something by you. The board is putting together an advisory committee on sustainable home improvements. We want to make Willow Creek Estates a model for energy efficiency while still maintaining neighborhood standards. Would you be interested in chairing that committee?" "I don't know, Roger. I've spent enough time dealing with HOA politics." "This wouldn't be politics. This would be helping neighbors make good decisions about things like solar, geothermal, energy-efficient windows, all that stuff. You've got the knowledge and the credibility. People trust you." I thought about it. A year ago, I would have said no without hesitation, but things had changed. I'd learned that being involved in the HOA wasn't about politics or power trips. It was about making the community better for everyone. "All right," I said. "I'll do it. but only if we keep things practical and focused on actually helping people, not creating more red tape. Deal. Roger shook my hand. The committee met for the first time in January. Besides me, there were 5 other homeowners interested in sustainability and energy efficiency. We developed a program where homeowners could get free consultations on energy improvements, access to vetted contractors, and streamlined approval processes for common upgrades. Within 6 months, 12 homes in the neighborhood had made significant energy efficiency improvements. The data showed that average energy costs in Willow Creek estates had dropped by 23%. Property values actually increased because buyers were attracted to the energy-efficient homes. Local media picked up on it. A Charlotte news station did a story about how our neighborhood had turned HOA regulations from obstacles into opportunities. They interviewed me, Roger, and several other homeowners who'd made improvements. The segment ended with the reporter saying, "What started as one homeowner's battle over a wood boiler has transformed an entire community's approach to sustainable living. It's proof that sometimes standing up for what you believe in can create positive change far beyond what you imagined." That summer, I installed a small pond in my backyard with a fountain. I submitted the architectural application as required, and it was approved in less than a week. No drama, no fighting, just a simple process that worked the way it should have from the beginning. I spent a lot of evenings that summer sitting by the pond, listening to the fountain, and thinking about everything that had happened. My heating system hummed quietly in its shed, ready for the next winter. The solar panels on my roof soaked up the sun. My energy bills were negligible. I'd won my battle with the HOA, but more than that, I'd helped change the culture of my entire community. Neighbors were friendlier, the board was more reasonable, and people felt empowered to improve their homes without fear of arbitrary enforcement. Frank came over one evening in late August with a 6-pack of beer. We sat by the pond, watching the sun set. "You ever think about what would have happened if you'd just given in when Patricia first came after your wood boiler?" he asked. "Sometimes," I admitted. I probably would have spent the last 2 years being miserable and poor, paying huge energy bills and resenting everyone in the neighborhood. Instead, you're the guy who beat the HOA and made everyone's lives better. That's got to feel good. It did feel good. Not because I'd beaten anyone, but because I'd stood up for what was right, and it had made a real difference. The pellet heating system that had started as a strategic move in my battle with Patricia had become a symbol of something bigger. The power of homeowners to take control of their energy future and their community governance. As fall arrived and the weather began to cool, I fired up my pellet system for another winter. It started smoothly, as always, and I watched the temperature in my house climb while the system ran almost silently. Outside, the shed looked like an innocent storage building, giving no hint of the technology inside or the battle that had been fought to install it. My phone rang. It was another homeowner from across Charlotte with HOA problems. I answered and spent 40 minutes walking them through their options, sharing Derek's contact information, and encouraging them to stand their ground if they were in the right. After I hung up, I realized something. That wood boiler that Patricia had banned had been good. But the pellet system I'd switched to was genuinely better in every way. Sometimes obstacles force us to find solutions we never would have discovered otherwise. I'd started this journey angry and defensive, just wanting to heat my house my way. I was ending it as someone who'd learned to navigate complex systems, stand up to bullies, build coalitions, and create positive change. The heating system was just the catalyst. As winter settled in fully and my neighbor's energy bills climbed while mine stayed low, I got occasional questions about my setup. I was always happy to show people the system, explain how it worked, and share Tom's contact information. 3 more neighbors submitted applications for similar systems that winter. Patricia and her husband did eventually move, right around the holidays. I heard they'd bought a house in a neighborhood with a much stricter HOA. I wished them well, genuinely meaning it. She taught me more than she'd ever intended about perseverance, documentation, and the importance of knowing your rights. On New Year's Eve, as I sat in my warm house watching the snow fall outside, I got an email from the state HOA regulatory board. They were compiling best practices for HOA governance and wanted to feature Willow Creek Estates as a case study in effective, homeowner-friendly policies. They specifically mentioned our alternative heating guidelines and sustainable improvement program. I forwarded the email to Roger with a simple message. We did something right. His response came back immediately. You did something right. The rest of us just stopped getting in the way. That wasn't entirely true, but I appreciated the sentiment. As the snow continued to fall, and my pellet system kept my house perfectly warm, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. From grief and financial stress after losing my wife, to the simple goal of saving money on heating, to a battle with an overreaching HOA president, to becoming an advocate for homeowner rights and sustainable living. The wood boiler ban that had seemed like such a catastrophe had actually been a blessing in disguise. My pellet system was superior in every measurable way. I'd made connections with people throughout the state who were fighting similar battles. I'd learned skills and gained knowledge that I never would have acquired otherwise. And my community was better for the whole experience. Sometimes the things we think are disasters are actually opportunities. We just have to be willing to fight for what's right and stay open to better solutions. Patricia tried to force me to give up and conform. Instead, I'd upgraded to an even bigger and better system, followed all the rules she insisted mattered so much, and proven that homeowners could stand up to HOA overreach and win. The pellet system would keep running efficiently for decades. The solar panels would keep producing power. And the precedents we'd set in Willow Creek Estates would help homeowners throughout North Carolina pursue energy independence without fear of arbitrary HOA enforcement. As midnight approached and fireworks began popping in the distance, I raised a glass to the new year and to the unexpected journey that had brought me here. My house was warm, my energy bills were low, and I'd helped change my community for the better. That wood boiler ban had been the best thing that ever happened to me, even if Patricia would never understand why. And my even bigger pellet system sat in its neat little shed, humming quietly and efficiently, a monument to the principle that sometimes the best revenge is simply proving you were right all along.